This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
All right, before we get into to this, the allegations in this come from Netflix documentary Sean Combs' The Reckoning, and the people interviewed in it. Sean Combs was convicted on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution. He was acquitted on the racketeering and sex trafficking charges. Janice Combs, his mom, denies everything said about her in the documentary. Kirk Burrowes, one of the accusers featured, has active litigation pending against the Combs family. Everyone discussed is entitled to the presumption of innocence on any unproven allegations. All right, let's get into it, and let me know your thoughts in the comment section on YouTube as we go through this. And while you're at it, please press subscribe so you don't miss our commentary and our coverage of this and the many cases that we cover for you here. So here's the question nobody really wants to ask out loud. Did Sean Combs become capable of what he was convicted of on his own, or was he kind of shaped, molded into it, if you will? Nature versus nurture, a little combination of both. That's usually what everybody is, because that's what Netflix is really asking with this documentary. This isn't just a recap of the trial. This isn't just a here's the rise and fall of Diddy packaged in 4 episodes for your streaming pleasure. This film is making an argument, and the argument is that the behavior Sean Combs exhibited as an adult, the control, the coercion, the manipulation, and the things prosecutors called freak-offs, that none of it came out of nowhere, that there's a through line, that it started somewhere. That before there was Puff Daddy, before there was P. Diddy, before there was Bad Boy Records and the white parties and the private jets and the empire, there was a kid in Mount Vernon. Whatever happened to that kid matters. And the documentary points directly at his mother's house, which is why Janice Combs, who spent the entire trial sitting in that federal courtroom every single day, who walked past the cameras with her head held high while her son faced charges that could have put him away for the rest of his life, who issued statements defending him while the whole world seemed ready to bury him, is now issuing a very different kind of statement. One where she's not defending Sean, she's defending herself, because the documentary doesn't just accuse Sean Combs of being a monster. It tries to explain how he became one, and the explanation it offers puts Janice Combs right at the center. So let's talk about what's actually being alleged here and who's saying it, because the sources matter, the context matters, and in a story this ugly, the credibility of the people telling the story might be the only thing that matters. 2 men make the case against Janice in this documentary. The first is Tim Patterson, a childhood friend and neighbor. Goes by Dog. Patterson says he grew up alongside Sean in Mount Vernon. He was in and out of that house. He saw how things operated, and Patterson claims he witnessed Janice physically abuse Sean repeatedly when they were kids. No spankings, not old school discipline. He describes it as substantiated, serious, disturbing enough that decades later he still doesn't like thinking about it. His exact words, it wasn't a joking thing. Damn, I hate thinking about that, man. And here's where it gets even more uncomfortable. These are the allegations. The documentary doesn't just rely on Patterson's testimony. It includes footage from 2010, Janice Combs appearing on Inside the Actor's Studio with her son, joking about giving Sean a lot of beatings to toughen him up. She said it herself on camera with a smile. The audience laughed. Oh, those beatings. Because apparently 15 years ago, on a 2010 episode of Inside the Actor's Studio, beating your child was laughable. Oh, you really whipped him good, didn't you? Crazy how time changes things, isn't it? Not that it was ever, for most of us 15 years ago, probably we had about the same opinion on beating your child as we do today. It's not an okay thing. But I guess for some it was... Oh, that's a knee slapper. It was framed as a cute story about tough love from a strong single mother who did what she had to do. But now in the context of everything we know or think we know, that clip hits a little different. Patterson isn't pulling this out of thin air. There's at least a version of the story that Janice herself has publicly acknowledged, even if she was framing it as humor at the time. And sometimes people use more extreme words, beating for spanking. I don't know why you would want to conflate the two for comic effect when you're talking about your child. But hey, there's a lot I don't understand. Patterson goes further than beatings, way further. He claims Janice threw parties at the family home when Sean was a kid. Not birthday parties, not cookouts. He's describing something else entirely. Parties with pimps. Like Mom used to hold. Mom used to hold the best parties when she'd bring the pimps over. Parties with drug dealers. Parties with, in his words, lesbians, homosexuals, drug addicts, gangsters. Parties where kids could walk into a room and find adults having sex. His quote, "That's what we were privy to. This is what we were fed." Again, his allegations. And Patterson's theory, which the documentary clearly endorses, whether explicitly or through editing, is that the environment Sean grew up in is normalized, and it normalized everything he later became infamous for. That the freak-offs didn't emerge from some dark corner of Sean's psyche when he got rich and powerful. That he saw the template before he ever had the ability to recreate it. That he was, in Patterson's framing, desensitized to boundaries before he was old enough to understand what boundaries even were. And look, if those parties, certainly, if those parties happened, they were not environments for children to be around. But that is not to say that if those children were around during them, that they didn't enjoy those parties. Not that they should have been there in the first place. But kids like to pretend they're adults. They like to pretend they're doing adult things. And when they're included in adult things, and I'm not saying anything sexual here. I'm not going there with it. But I'm saying the drinking, the atmosphere, wow, people are doing all this all around us. This must be what adults do. They're having fun. They're drinking. They're doing this or that. If you walk away from that with a positive experience, you walk away from that not traumatized, you're going to look back on those memories, if they were positive for you, as positive memories as you get older, no matter how outside of the bounds they actually were. It's how your brain is going to imprint that piece of data onto your psyche. Suddenly having parties like that where people are doing those adult things, and oh gosh, now you're an adult, Sean. Now you can participate in some of that stuff you saw as a kid going on in those rooms. Oh my God. And this is normal. This is what people do, right? This is how adults party, right? That's how you fuck with the mind of a child. Expose them to very adult things at a very young age in a non-traumatizing way, but in a very normalizing way, and you will inadvertently have traumatized that child. It's a massive claim, and it's coming from one guy with 40-year memories and no documentation. So is Tim Patterson credible? Look, I don't know him. I can't tell you if he's got an axe to grind or if he's genuinely trying to provide context for something that's haunted him. What I can tell you is that childhood memories, especially memories of trauma, especially memories from decades ago, are notoriously unreliable. Ask any psychologist. The brain doesn't record events like a video camera. It reconstructs them. It fills in gaps. It shapes narrative after the fact. I'm not here to say he's lying by any stretch of the imagination. I'm just here to look at the whole picture. But here's the thing. Patterson isn't the only voice here, and Janice's own words are sitting right there on tape. She joked about beating. She said it herself. So when she now calls Patterson a liar, you have to ask, is he lying, or is he just saying out loud what she already admitted in a different context, using different words from a different perspective? The second witness is Kirk Burrowes, and this is where it gets legally messy, personally messy, and frankly, really hard to untangle. Kirk Burrowes co-founded Bad Boy Entertainment with Sean Combs. He wasn't some peripheral figure. He wasn't a hanger-oner trying to get close to fame. He was in the room when the label was built. He helped structure the business. He was there for the Biggie signing, the Uptown days, the whole origin story. He kept journals, contemporaneous handwritten notes about what was happening inside the company and inside Sean's life. The documentary shows pages from those journals. This isn't a guy who showed up 30 years later claiming he remembered something. He wrote it down at the time. And Burrowes alleges he witnessed Sean Combs slap his mother on December 28th of 1991. The context here is crucial. This date, December 28th, 1991, was the night of the City College Stampede. Sean had promoted a celebrity basketball game at a gymnasium in Harlem. Heavy D was involved. It was supposed to be a big moment for a young promoter trying to make a name for himself. But the event was oversold, massively oversold. The crowd rushed the doors. People were crushed in a stairwell. 9 people died. Nearly 30 more were injured. It was a catastrophe. And Sean Combs, a 22-year-old, found his name attached to a mass casualty event before his career had even really started. The fallout was enormous. There were investigations, there were lawsuits, there was blame flying in every direction. Sean was reportedly holed up in a hotel with his mother in the immediate aftermath, trying to figure out what the hell was going to happen to him. And according to Burrowes, during that time, Janice questioned whether Sean had made the right decision, dropping out of Howard to chase this music business dream. The implication being, maybe this whole thing was a mistake. Maybe you should have stayed in school. Maybe tragedy is a sign. And Sean's response allegedly was violence. Burrowes' exact quote, "I saw Janice question Sean. He's going into this music business thing. He just left school and now this extreme tragedy has occurred. She's like, did he make the right decision? And I saw him put his hands on her. Called her a bitch and slapped her. He's not looking back." It's a hell of an allegation. And it's denied completely by Janice, by Sean's legal team, by everyone in the Combs camp. But here's the part you need to know about Kirk Burrowes, the part that complicates everything. He says Kirk Burrowes has been suing Sean Combs since 2003. Again, it's not to say he's lying, but it's for context. Understand what's going on here. The original lawsuit claimed that in 1996, Combs stormed into his office wielding a baseball bat with an attorney in tow and forced him under threat of violence to sign over his 25% stake in Bad Boy Entertainment. He says he invested $100,000 to help launch the label. He said he was instrumental in its early success, and he says Sean took it all from him through intimidation. That lawsuit was dismissed, statute of limitations being the reasoning. Burrowes filed again in February of 2025. This time he named Janice as a defendant. He's alleging fraud, sexual harassment, physical abuse, and decades-long conspiracy to blacklist him from the music industry. He claims he ended up homeless because the Combs family systematically destroyed his career and his reputation to make sure he could never challenge them. According to reporting at the time, that lawsuit is still pending. Yeah. So is Kirk Burrowes telling the truth about what he witnessed in December 1991? Or is he a guy who's been trying to get paid for 30 years? Who's had lawsuits thrown out of court? Who finally found a platform in this Netflix documentary that would give him an audience? Honestly, I can't say I know, and I'm not going to pretend I do. What I will say is this. Having a financial grievance doesn't automatically make you a liar. People can want money they believe they're owed and also be telling the truth about what they saw. Those two things aren't mutually exclusive, but it does mean you have to weigh what Burrowes is saying differently than if he had nothing to gain. That's just how credibility assessment works. It's not unfair to him to point that out. It is basic due diligence, and we want to be clear on all of this. And Janice, for her part, goes directly at his motives. Her statement to Deadline doesn't mince words, says, quote, "For him to use this tragedy and incorporate fake narratives to further his prior failed and current attempt to gain what was never his Bad Boy records is wrong, outrageous, and past offensive." She's not being subtle. She's saying Kirk Burrowes is a liar who's been trying to steal her son's company for 3 decades and is using this documentary to make his latest play. You know what? Maybe she's right. Maybe that's exactly what's happening. Or maybe, and this is the other possibility, maybe she's doing what any mother would do when the alternative is admitting her son hit her in front of a witness 34 years ago. Maybe she's protecting him the way she's always protected him. Maybe that's what this whole thing has always been. I don't know which version is true, and neither does anyone watching that documentary. On Tim Patterson's allegations, the abuse, the parties, the environment, Janice is equally direct in her denial. Her quote, "I was a single mother raising my son. I had or held 3 and even 4 jobs in an attempt to provide a comfortable upbringing and quality education for my child. I raised Sean with love and hard work, not abuse." She calls Patterson claims not truthful and salacious to promote the series. She describes Sean growing up as respectful, diligent, industrious, an overachiever, a good kid from a loving home who made something of himself through talent and determination. It's a compelling counter-narrative. Single mom, multiple jobs, sacrificed everything for her son. That's a story America loves, and a story that resonates, and a story they've been sharing forever. Until you start hearing the other story. Then you're like, whoa, wait a second. Because here's a part she doesn't address, and I think this is notable. She doesn't say a word about the party allegations, not one word about the pimps, the sex, the atmosphere Patterson described. She doesn't deny it. She doesn't explain it. She doesn't acknowledge it exists. Maybe she thinks it's beneath response. Maybe her lawyers told her not to engage with it. Maybe there's just no good answer. But the silence is there, and silence in a situation like this tends to be loud. She also doesn't explain the 2010 footage, the lot of beatings comments. She said it on camera to a live studio audience, and now she's calling the man who corroborates that claim a liar without addressing her own words. That's a gap. Gaps matter. And then there's the Fitty Cent of it all, because you can't talk about this documentary without talking about who made it. Curtis Fitty Cent Jackson is an executive producer on Sean Combs' The Reckoning. And if you know anything about the history between these two men, you know that's not a coincidence. Fitty Cent has been publicly antagonizing Sean Combs for years. Not months. Years. He's posted memes, jokes. He's trolled him through the trial, through the arrest, through every single stage of Combs' public humiliation. He's been treating this whole situation like a personal victory lap. The beef between Fitty and Diddy is old. It's ugly. It's petty in the way that only beefs between rich men can be, and it's very, very personal. Does that mean the documentary is a hit piece? Combs' team certainly thinks so. They sent Netflix a cease and desist letter on December 1st, one day before the series dropped, calling it corporate retaliation and a shameful hit piece. They claim Diddy turned down a documentary pitch from Netflix CEO Ted Sardanos years ago, and this whole project is payback for that rejection. They claim footage was stolen. They claim the whole thing is legitimate. Netflix released the series anyway. In their response, Netflix says Fitty Cent had no creative control over the documentary. They say, I should take that back, because, look, he is the producer. He did have creative control. They say no one was paid to participate is what they're going at. They say all footage was legally obtained. A spokesperson told reporters, quote, "This is not a hit piece or an act of retribution." The director, Alexandria Stapleton, seems credible. She's talked about her approach, about making sure the documentary wasn't just exploitation. The journalism looked solid. They interviewed former law enforcement, former bad boy associates, former artists, even jurors for the trial. This isn't some YouTube conspiracy video slapped together with stock footage and speculation. It's not. But here's the thing about 50 Cent's involvement. It doesn't matter if the documentary is completely factual if the audience can be convinced it's motivated by revenge. His fingerprints on the project give the Combs family the easiest possible out. They don't have to disprove the allegations point by point. They don't have to explain the inconsistencies in Janice's denials. They just have to point at the executive producer and say, See, look who's talking. Consider the source. And that's exactly what they're doing. It's a smart play, honestly. Doesn't make them right, but it's smart. So where does all of this leave us? Well, Sean Combs is in a federal prison. That part isn't in dispute. He's at FCI Fort Dix in New Jersey, serving 50 months after being convicted on 2 counts of transporting individuals across state lines to engage in prostitution. He was acquitted on the more serious charges, the RICO count, the sex trafficking allegations that could put him away for decades. The jury heard the government's case about a sex trafficking enterprise and didn't buy all of it, but they bought enough to convict him on the prostitution counts, enough to send him away at least until 2028. He, of course, is appealing. His team floated the idea of a Trump pardon that doesn't appear to be materializing. And on top of everything else, he's still facing dozens of civil lawsuits. The LA County Sheriff's Department recently opened a new probe into claims of sexual battery. His legal problems are nowhere near over. The documentary isn't about reigniting or relitigating the conviction. The trial is done. The verdict is in. What the documentary is trying to do is explain it. It's asking the questions true crime audiences always want answered. How does someone get to this point? How does a person become capable of what Sean Combs was found guilty of? And the answer it offers is environment, conditioning, origin. A childhood where violence was normalized, allegedly, where boundaries allegedly did not exist, where the seeds of everything that came later were planted before Sean Combs ever had fame or money or power. The documentary's argument is that he didn't become this person overnight. He was made into this person. And the person who allegedly made him is now issuing press releases calling the whole thing a lie. If that's true, the thesis of this documentary holds up, and Janice Combs isn't just the mother of a convicted man standing loyal by his side. She's part of the origin story. She's a chapter in the explanation of how we got here. And if it's not true, then she's an 85-year-old woman being dragged through the mud by a bitter ex-business partner who's been nursing a grudge since the Clinton administration, and a childhood friend with hazy memories and no documentation, all of it packaged and produced by her son's sworn enemy for a streaming platform that's printing money off her family's destruction. I don't know which version is accurate. I'm not sure anyone outside her house or that house ever really will. But I do know this: Janice Combs says she raised her son with love. Two men who were there do say otherwise. One of them has been suing the family for 30 years. The other has nothing but his word and a clip of Janice herself smiling on television, joking about giving her son a lot of beatings. And a man is sitting in federal prison. A documentary is telling the world the violence was learned. A mother is telling the world that's a lie crafted by people who want money and revenge. And somewhere in between those two versions of the truth is a kid who grew up in Mount Vernon, who lost his father when he was 3, who was raised by a single mother working 4 jobs, who became one of the most powerful men in hip-hop, and who is now inmate number something somewhere at Fort Dix. The only people who really know what happened in that house, the only people who know whether the allegations are true or whether this is all opportunism dressed up as journalism, are the people with the most to gain or lose from their version of events. That's the story. That's where we are. And I don't think we're getting any closer to the truth anytime soon. Your thoughts in the comments section. I'd love to see them, hear them, read them, respond to them on YouTube. Be sure to check us out there. Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi is what you search to find us there. And be sure to press subscribe while you're there as well, or wherever you're listening to podcasts. If you're on Apple Podcasts right now listening to us, thank you, number one. And number two, if you don't mind, go to the review section on this channel, on this podcast, and leave us a positive review. Search Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi on Apple Podcasts and leave us a review. We would greatly appreciate that. Helps us grow in the rankings, lets other folks find us and hear our reporting and our commentaries and all that. So thank you in advance for your support on that. Until next time, I'm Tony Bruschi. We'll talk again.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.